When Keith Urban finally broke his silence about the end of his 19-year marriage, the words he delivered caught everyone completely off guard. Rather than sounding defensive or calculated, he spoke with the raw fatigue of someone grieving something he once thought would never slip away. His voice exposed a truth he had avoided for far too long, revealing painful honesty about Nicole Kidman, their life together, and the part he now acknowledges he played in its unraveling. That admission stunned the entire audience. After nearly 2 months of saying nothing once the separation went public, Keith's quietness only stirred more theories. Fans, reporters, and insiders debated endlessly about what had truly happened between him and Nicole after nearly 2 decades as a couple. But when Keith finally spoke during a stop on his High and Alive world tour, it wasn't through rehearsed publicity or a polished interview. Instead, he confessed it directly from the stage in front of thousands in a way no one could have predicted. "I blew it to smithereens," he suddenly admitted, offering something messy, unfiltered, and painfully honest that couldn't have come from any scripted coaching. What shook people even more wasn't just what he said, but the moment he chose to say it. Nicole had filed for divorce on September 30th, 2025, abruptly ending a marriage many considered Hollywood's steadiest. And while the public was still reeling, Keith seemed to confirm that the split had been developing for far longer than anyone realized. Looking back, the clues were already scattered throughout the past year. His cracking voice in interviews, his emotional speech during the 2024 AFI tribute, where he thanked Nicole for saving him during his darkest years, and the subtle distance fans noticed before the headlines ever appeared. What once sounded like a loving tribute later felt like early signs of deep restraint, hints that he had leaned on her more heavily than he ever said aloud. Then came the moment that made everything even more complicated. During recent performances, fans observed that Keith had begun altering lyrics in songs once devoted to Nicole. "The Fighter," written about their early relationship, suddenly featured Maggie Ball's name during a show she posted online. At another concert, "But You'll Think of Me" shifted into "But I Bet You Think About Me," sparking immediate online chaos. But Keith insisted people were stretching things too far. "Stop reading stuff into it," he told the Nashville crowd, though his pushback didn't calm the uproar. With each denial came fresh questions about what had truly driven the marriage to fall apart. That growing suspicion refused to fade. Once the lyric changes exploded across social media, the narrative around Keith rapidly changed. What had appeared to be a quiet, heartbreaking separation transformed into a whirlwind of rumors, accusations, and wild theories. And at the center of it all was one name, Maggie Ball, the 25-year-old guitarist who had been sharing the stage with him for months. Fans had already picked up on subtle interactions, extra glances, playful on-stage moments, and an easy chemistry that looked different in hindsight. But when the video surfaced of him revising "The Fighter" to include her name, "When they're trying to get to you, Maggie, I'll be your guitar player," the internet didn't hesitate to jump to conclusions. Making matters worse, the song had been one Keith openly said was written about Nicole, built from early conversations about protecting her and standing by her. Redirecting those words towards someone else struck many as especially cruel given the timing. Maggie's caption, "Did Keith Urban just say that?" only fueled the fire. In the days that followed, speculation intensified. Some argued Keith had already moved on. Others believed the tension had begun long before the public saw it. And although Maggie's father tried to clarify things by calling their relationship strictly professional, his uncertain, "I haven't heard one way or the other," didn't help quiet anything. Even country singer Alexandra Kay, familiar with both Keith and Maggie, admitted the situation left her heartbroken, describing it as painful for everyone involved. Still, Keith held his ground during the final Nashville show. Before singing "You'll Think of Me," he faced the crowd and insisted, "I've been covering it like this for a long time. Stop reading stuff into it." His exhaustion was obvious, but the crowd's unease showed they weren't convinced. The timing, the lyric changes, and the unfolding drama backstage had already created a story too big to erase with a few words. And through all of this, Nicole Kidman remained completely silent, a silence that only deepened the uncertainty surrounding the collapse of their marriage. The quiet cracks had begun forming long before the spectacle, long before the viral videos, awkward interviews, and whispered talk of a third person. Those close to the couple had already sensed the shift. Their marriage, once held up as proof that love could survive celebrity chaos, slowly began wearing down. The earliest visible signs didn't show up as scandal, but as the subtle absence of shared appearances. Nicole walked red carpets alone. Keith attended events without her. Fans initially chalked it up to conflicting schedules, but the pattern persisted until coincidence no longer seemed convincing.
Insiders later revealed that the true strain came from the relentless demands of their careers. Nicole was filming non-stop, spending part of her summer on the set of Practical Magic 2, while Keith was consumed by his High and Alive tour. For years, they managed the tug-of-war between music and film, but by 2024 and 2025, their worlds drifted into separate orbits. They became what one source called parallel lives, two people devoted to each other, yet rarely in the same place long enough to feel connected. Not long after, Keith's public comments began taking on a sharper edge. During a July appearance on Air with Ryan Seacrest, he fumbled through answers about how he and Nicole juggled their hectic schedules. So when Seacrest pressed him about whether coordinating production and touring was challenging, Keith hesitated before muttering, "It's work. Life doesn't wait." The words didn't feel tender, they felt worn down. Some listeners brushed it off. Others sensed a shift, a glimpse of strain he hadn't meant to show. Behind closed doors, the gap between them was widening in ways few understood. Friends of Nicole said she was still fighting for the marriage, clinging to the stability she'd built after years of heartbreak. Meanwhile, Keith, according to those around him, had started drifting, making decisions that worried people who'd known him forever. No one detailed what those choices were, but the timing, the tone, the concern all pointed towards something unraveling. By the time the public learned they were living apart, everything was already written. The fairy tale had been fraying much longer than anyone wanted to believe. When everything finally collapsed, the world was caught off guard. By the time Nicole Kidman filed for divorce on September 30th, 2025, the marriage wasn't simply troubled, it had already eroded in private. What stunned people most wasn't the paperwork, but the revelation that the split hadn't been mutual. Those close to Nicole insisted she had still been fighting to save what they had, convinced they were working their way back. She assumed the distance was temporary, the tension something they could overcome, that nearly 20 years together meant enough to rebuild. But while she was trying to steady things, Keith had already drifted out emotionally. Insiders said his decision came abruptly, without hint or warning, leaving Nicole blindsided. People who'd known her for decades said she was shocked not just by the separation, but by how final Keith was once he made the choice. When TMZ announced it, Keith had already closed the door, firmly, quickly, without looking back. Something inside him seemed to have snapped mid-tour, spilling out in ways Nicole never saw coming. Worse still was how quickly Keith's demeanor shifted afterward. He went silent online for almost 2 months, a quiet stretch fans interpreted as guilt, grief, or avoidance depending on who you asked. Then, without explanation, he resurfaced by promoting The Road, his new reality competition series with Blake Shelton. During the premiere, he spoke plainly about life on tour, waking up at 3:30 a.m., sick, lonely, exhausted, and wondering why he kept pushing forward. His honesty hit hard, but it also revealed a man cracking under pressure he never fully voiced. Nicole, on the other hand, stayed completely silent. No interviews, no comments, just legal filings citing irreconcilable differences. Those close to her understood the quiet. The truth beneath it hurt too deeply. She hadn't wanted the marriage to end. She had spent years standing by him through addiction, emotional valleys, and the constant chaos of music life. And in the end, it ended, not because she chose to walk away, but because he shut the door first. In the weeks that followed, Keith Urban's behavior baffled nearly everyone watching. One day he was silent, the next he was joking online about old hairstyles. Then he turned defensive when fans questioned his choice to alter lyrics tied to Nicole. But behind the scattered reactions, something more genuine was surfacing. Keith was finally revealing what had been brewing inside him long before the marriage officially collapsed. At the final show of his High and Alive tour in Nashville, he paused before performing You'll Think of Me, a song with deep emotional history between them. He didn't look physically drained. He looked like a man out of places to hide. He said, "I've been carrying it this way for a long time," pushing back against rumors he was singing it for someone else. For once, he wasn't dodging. He wasn't charming. He was pleading. Stop assuming. Stop inventing stories. Stop trying to guess what he wasn't ready to say. But actions always reveal more than explanations. And the truth he slowly began sharing had nothing to do with Maggie B., some mysterious affair, or hidden betrayal. What he confessed to was painfully simple, painfully human, and devastating in its honesty. He wasn't okay, and hadn't been for a long while.
Tour pressure, fame fatigue, hollow moments, waking up miserable at 3:30 a.m. on a tour bus, all the things he'd hinted at in the road premiere had been wearing him down. He opened up about losing a sense of purpose, feeling overwhelmed, and struggling to juggle music's demands with being a husband and father. Insiders described it as a midlife unraveling, one he didn't fully recognize until the damage was done. And though he never said it outright, the truth echoed in every interview, every altered lyric, and every hesitant pause that slipped through his voice. He didn't walk away from Nicole because of another person. He stepped back because he no longer understood how to keep their world intact. That truth didn't soften the heartbreak. It didn't take away the sting of how suddenly everything collapsed. Yet, it was the closest he had ever come to admitting reality. The one he had run from for years. Because speaking it out loud meant acknowledging he wasn't the husband he hoped to be. What is left once everything breaks? As the dust finally settled, the narrative around Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's split drifted away from speculation, altered lyrics, and trending clips. What lingered was something far more intimate. Two people who had built nearly 2 decades of memories, now standing apart because of a choice neither could reverse. And while the public tried to point fingers or weave together clues that never belonged side by side, a quieter truth surfaced. One shaped not by scandal, but by fatigue, widening distance, and careers that tugged them in opposite directions until the gap became too wide to close. Nicole, although she was the one who submitted the divorce filing in Nashville on September 30th, wasn't truly the one ready to let go. Friends close to her said she fought to keep the relationship alive, even when the signs were unmistakable. She shifted her filming commitments, shouldered the emotional burden, and tried to shield their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, from the fallout she feared was coming. But when she finally made the paperwork official, she wasn't choosing to end things. She was acknowledging that the ending had already arrived. Keith, on the other hand, appeared in public with a strange mix of honesty and avoidance. He poked fun at his old haircuts online, promoted his new series, The Road, and dismissed rumors with a trace of irritation. Yet, in the softer moments, those fans noticed between performances or in the tremble of certain interview answers, he exposed a man who had been falling apart long before Nicole signed those documents. His remarks about feeling isolated on tour, his admission that he had blown it to smithereens, and the weariness in his tone said more than any headline. Insiders later shared that by the time the split was official, Keith had already checked out emotionally, though what that meant remained unclear. Some blamed sheer burnout, others hinted at a midlife spiral, but almost everyone agreed on one thing. The bond between Keith and Nicole didn't collapse because it lacked strength. It collapsed because life eroded it faster than they could mend the breaks. And now, as they move separately into whatever comes next, the saddest part of their story is how firmly they once believed in the future they never had the chance to complete. In the end, Keith Urban's honesty arrived too late to salvage the life he and Nicole created over 19 years, but it did reveal the burden he had carried behind closed doors. Their journey isn't just another celebrity split. It's a reminder that even the closest partnerships can fracture under pressures invisible to the outside world. What do you feel weighed them down the most? The distance, the whispers, or the emotions they hid from everyone? If you're interested in more deep dives into the real stories behind Hollywood's biggest headlines, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.